Okay, so thank you, Matt, for being a guest on the Leadermorphosis podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic and about your book. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thank you.
I was reading back over my notes. I took loads of notes when I was reading your book because there are so many great sound bites. And when I was rereading them this afternoon, I thought maybe a good place to open up the conversation is to start where you start in the book, which is with this, nice provocation that businesses are broken and they break people. So
Yeah.
can you unpack that a bit for us? What does that mean? And
Well, there's no unpacking needed. You just look around, and that's the system. So what I mean by the system is the world that we live in, and it's not a conspiracy. There's not an invasion from outer space that imposed that on us. We done it to ourselves. Um, what that means is that we can undo it all ourselves. Okay. And not undo it all because big parts of it are very, very beneficial. But the way that businesses are in particular, and there are other areas that are not kosher in my mind, but the way that businesses work, they break people, and I mean everybody. I was a boss for the longest time. Um, I went up the ladder and was very proud of myself and all that stuff. Um, but in the end, I was a worse person while I was being a boss, blindly being a boss, than now that I'm more conscious of what's going on. Um, and what I mean is, so you learn to give orders, and you expect orders to be followed, and they're not followed 67% of the time. They're not followed. Okay. Um, People hear what they hear and they do what they do, and you go, yeah, that's what I meant, right? You take credit for that. And when it doesn't, when it's something that you don't want to take credit for, then you fire the person, or you demote him, or you put him in the corner somewhere and make him miserable. You take all that stuff home. That's what's insane. People that say, "Oh, he stays in the car." No, it doesn't. You take all that stuff home, and you apply it to your family. You can't fire your family, so you do all kinds of things. Um, you impose all kinds of things to your kids. I was talking to somebody yesterday. She's pregnant. She's worried about warping the kid's mind, and I said, well, just so we talked about this, and that's what I mean by broken people. And so it's 65. When you hit 65, you welcome retirement because you're so tired of the whole thing, you know. And people that have been bosses now have money and resources to do other things, and they do charity, and they go to Africa and they buy 3 elephants, and but it's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over. So um, that's a system that I think is broken, and it breaks people along with it. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when someone says it out loud, it's like, the emperor's new clothes almost. It's like you realize, yeah, that's so true. Isn't that crazy that we all kind of enter into that game? And I like what you, sorry?
I said happily,
Happily,
and we,
yeah.
we do it happily.
Hmm. I like what you say also in the book about, feudalism, and that in many ways we haven't really left that system, that
Right.
it's still the kind of landlords in charge. And I also like a term that, when I first came across you a few years ago that you used that I hadn't heard used before, was this idea of like a Fiat hierarchy.
Mhm.
Can you say something about what that means for listeners?
The problem is that I say too much, but stop me when you feel it's appropriate. So the world is based on, and this is not my idea. This I picked up from some author a long time ago. that our world is where it's based on domination, right? Either I dominate you or you dominate me. And there's a certain amount of hierarchy and domination that is we have to have it. We don't know how to operate without hierarchies. But like right now, I'm talking, you're listening, and then you're talking, and I shut up, and like that, right? And the audience is listening, and then they'll type comments and stuff like that. They're part of the conversation. But so it's never domination, as opposed to a fixed hierarchy. I've got the capital. I bought this place. You're going to be the boss. You're going to be the sub boss, and blah, 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 all the way down to the peons. Okay. Even if the peons are very um, well educated people, highly skilled, uh, I worked in the world of programming and developers and stuff like that. Really smart people. Um, but they still get a salary at the end of the month, and that's it, right? Um, and if I don't like what they did, or did something that goes against, that makes me lose face, then I fire them. And in our system, particularly in the U.S., when I fire that person, I've taken away not only his salary, I've taken away his insurance, health insurance. I've taken away his status. I've taken away. I mean, basically, I stripped him down. Um, and I went through being fired once, and it really shook the hell. I mean, I was frozen for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I didn't know what to do for 3 or 4 months, and because all those things have been taken away from me. So, went to a party, and people said, "What do you do?" And now I'm VP of this and that and the other, and just saying the VP kind of put an aura on you and stuff like that. That action took all that away. Uh, and that's the wherewithal of the Fiat hierarchy. And I call it Fiat because I say so. Why are you the boss? Because the owner told me to be the boss, and I told those people to be the boss forever, right? No matter. And other people say, "Oh, but he doesn't do anything. He's ignorant. He's always slowing us down." And that's the thing. It is business hostile. That setup is business hostile. And again, I'm not the first one to say it. Um, Umer Haq, I think is probably you pronounce his name, says it over and over and over and over. Perhaps says it a little bit too much. But business can be a lot better, a lot more, and a lot more engaging, a lot more financially sustainable. Da, da, da. But we have to let go of the Fiat hierarchy. And the thing is, now I look at the world and I see it all over the place. Anywhere you go, there's a Fiat hierarchy, and it's more or less benign, more or less hostile to human beings, but it's almost always there.
I want to talk about, so you talk about two concepts in the book: co-management, which I guess oftentimes on this podcast I'm talking to guests about self-management, but I think they're sort of the same thing under a different name.
Yep.
And co-ownership. And I want to definitely spend some time talking about co-ownership, but let's maybe start with co-management, because I think chronologically that was your first exploration, right? So you said that you had this career as a boss for a while, and then at a certain point you decided to start this company, Nearsoft, and you wanted to start that with a different model in mind, a different kind of vision, moving away from this kind of Fiat hierarchy idea. So can you share something about, that journey and some of the key milestones of exploring co-management at Nearsoft?
So yeah, that was Nearsoft was the keystone, the big change for me. Before that, I was definitely in the Fiat world, very much happy in the Fiat world. I was doing well and all that stuff. But there was something that I was lacking. I couldn't be friends with people. They were my employees, and stuff like that. Even my partner, in theory, I should have handled him at arm's length, as a partner, and I got more satisfaction out of being friends with people and being, just chumming up with people. And so at Nearsoft, which we never thought was going to get as big as it did, I thought it would be nice to just be friends, not having titles, not have a Fiat hierarchy per se. But we didn't know anything. We were totally ignorant about it. And my partner said, I like to build a company that works for not just for us, but for everybody. And I went, perfect. We didn't know what we meant. that was the reality of it. And then we read Ricardo Semler's book, Maverick, which was an eye opener because, like, hey, this guy's did it in the factory setting. It should be a walk in the park for us in a software setting, right? You don't carry buckets of cement or anything, and your hands are always clean. So, and I had this bias of, and people are educated and all that nonsense, which has gone away since. And so we took it as a guide, not as a rule book, not as a Bible that you have to follow, but as a guide. And there were some things that we adopted, some things that we didn't. And it kept feeding on itself. I mean, things were going better. Our business kind of went crazy on the basis that people could make decisions on the spot, without asking us. Even so, we like I said, we didn't know where we were going, and for a long time, people tried to ask us what to do, and they asked for permission, and because we're the owners, right? And eventually we got on to are you asking me for an opinion or are you asking for permission? But it took a while for us to even realize that was a question, and then it was like, I'm asking you for permission. Never mind, and go the other way. And but we had to kind of discover all these things. The fact that we didn't have to pay for an elite class of managers. Everybody was managing everything. The fact that our clients started saying, we want to grow the team. We want this 10 more people like Joe over there. And it's like, holy shit, can I say that?
Yeah.
So Joe made the sale. I'm just taking the order. Joe made the sale. So more power to him. And that's where, so that was the whole journey and stuff like that. And I didn't have to make a lot of decisions, and my partner didn't have to make a lot of decisions that we didn't like to make. I don't like to make decisions, but I just say when to eat, and what do you want to eat? Choose whatever you want, we'll split it, because we don't eat much of this. And why should I decide what fish to eat? Mahi or salmon. I like both. And the same thing with, should we put books over there or over here? Should I sit over here or over there? What are you asking me? I'm taking out responsibility I don't need to take on. You're an adult like I am. Sit wherever you want to. I want to sit near my team. Okay. Microsoft, I help you. You grab the desk and we'll help you carry it over. So it carries a lot of benefits to the business part. And so we just kept going. And that's when we ran to the ownership issue, that the owner is the ultimate boss. So all this talk about future work and not having bosses and flat organizations, they don't exist. There's nothing is flat. All of that is at best temporary, right? It lasts for a while. When I'm alive, I can be benign with everybody, and then I die, and my son is not so benign. Actually, my son is a co-author, so he would be even crazier. But I could sell the company. I'm the owner. I could sell, like we did. We also managed to make an arrangement where the Fiat hierarchy wouldn't invade us. We continue to operate the way we've always operated. But what happens when we go? When we something happens to us? What if I get in a car and I'm 70 years old, so I can die any moment. I could die in this podcast.
Let's hope not.
Hopefully not. And I'll be polite and I'll wait. But all those things could happen. And for example, the ones that Lalou talked about, 12 companies, and 2 or 3 of them have come back.
Mm.
More than that. In FAVI in particular was inherited by the son, who was, I think, a lawyer. And the son said, this is not working for me. And he went the other way. That all happens because he's the owner, the legal owner of the operation. And that, unfortunately, I didn't come to that idea. We didn't come to that idea until a couple of years after we sold the company. But I realized that, yeah, it's self-management, co-management. Co-management rhymes with co-ownership. That's why.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the collaborative part of it. There's no self. There's no company that manages itself. That's why I changed it. But the co-ownership thing, the co-management thing is important because it gets people to think like adults and not ask for permissions. And then they bring that home also. The kid says, can I go out? And says, well, I don't know, should you go out? It's raining. You can get wet. I like to get wet. Okay, if you like to get wet, then go out. You're not going to wet inside the house. But be careful that you don't catch pneumonia, because it's going around. So if you feel like not quite right, come into the house and we'll dry you up. But you're treating the kid to be an adult, and it makes its own decisions. As Fiat parents, and I can tell you because I raised my kids as Fiat parents, my way, you got to learn this way, which is my way, because that's what's going to make you successful. And only success, financial success, will make you happy. My wife said once, well, I just want my kids to be happy. And I said, yeah, but if they're poor, they're not going to be happy. I said that. It wasn't recorded, but it's in my head, because I believe that. That's why I'm saying we do it to ourselves, and that's not true. There's plenty of people that don't have all the resources in the world and are very happy, but I just couldn't see it that way. And so people start taking that home, and it's very important now for that reason. But I think the only sustainable thing to do is to say, okay, now you learn to manage yourself and us and everything else. You also need to learn the ownership part of it, because it has to be sustainable. It's not a charity, right? And so, do we change strategies? Do we change quality? Do we change, all those questions? Do we buy this? Do we sell that? Do we borrow money? Do we not borrow? All those things were left to the owners. And okay, so that's part of the training that they didn't get. And when they go do the next thing, since they don't know that part, they'll agitate for co-ownership, co-management. I'm sorry, and but they forget the ownership side, and the brand, the quality, the market. All of that is part of the ownership side of things. So since it's sharing the earnings, that's nice, and we did that, and K2K teaches that, and all that. But you got to go beyond that, and it's going to be tough as hell to make it happen.
Yeah, I think this is like a real learning opportunity for this, future of work, new ways of working, etc. movement. that, as you put it in the book, co-management is too dependent on enlightened monarchs,
Yeah, I like that.
and what happens when they walk off the stage.
Right.
And this is a question that I think I was trying to ask Jos de Blok when I interviewed him recently. What happens when you go, will Buurtzorg, keep this way of working? Is it in any danger of reverting back, like you said, some of those case studies in Laloux's book?
Mhm.
And this for me is like a really important question. So I really like that you're kind of offering this provocation for us to really think about. And I think a lot of times in the context of self-managing companies, or even kind of traditional hierarchical companies, when people are saying things like, we want employees with an ownership mindset or so on, it feels unfair to say that if they're not owners for real.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. So why don't they think like owners? Because they're not.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't I act like an adult? Because you shouldn't treat me like one.
Mm.
So I ask for permission to go to the bathroom. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I go? And by the way, this starts at home. Like I said, we take it from work and we teach at home, and then school is even you have to ask for number one, number two. I don't know how it is in Europe, but here those things mean something. And we're teaching, and there's an answer. There's one answer. And if you get it right, you get an A. If you get it wrong, you get a B minus or a C or an F. But you don't get an A. No way. Uh, and That's the Fiat thinking at work. Is we're training people to think Fiat. So we're going to do it this way or that way. How about we do both? How we treat both like experiments. You believe that this way is going to work. I'd like to see if this other way is going to work. And if it doesn't um, give me all the results that I expect, now we learn something. Maybe we can then marry the two at the end. Whatever. So experimentation is very important too.
Mm. Yeah.
And experimentation does not work in the Fiat hierarchy because I make a commitment to you. You're my boss, right? And I say, oh, we'll have that by Friday. And what do? You turn around, you tell your boss, by Thursday night, Friday morning, it'll be done. And he turns around to the other guy and says, yeah, somewhere between Wednesday and Friday, but yeah, no problem. It'll be done. It keeps changing. It's the game of the telephone, broken telephone, but it works against me. So I come on Thursday and I go, you know what? What we thought was this big is this big. So we need to move it to Monday. And what's your reaction going to be? It's like, no, 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 no. We got to deliver something on Friday. And that's where technical debt comes from. That's where all these, I don't want to call them lies, but they're lies. All these fantasy comes in. Is for me to help you keep face and you to keep face to your boss and all the way up. And then the board says, oh, everybody, they deliver on Friday. Yeah, what they promised. Yeah, absolutely. And then you find out 3 months later that, the product is not what it should have been because it's been losing, steam and features and stuff like that on the way there. So again, it's another thing that works against quality, which is, you like to have quality, right? So.
There's a really great story that you share in the book about the kind of working group that came up with a proposal for how to distribute profits amongst people in the company. And eventually what they came up with was we split it evenly. And you and your co-owner kind of, didn't agree with that necessarily, but we're like, okay, let's try it. And if, it doesn't work next year, we'll do something different. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a good test of, in fact, one of my previous guests, Vivek Menon from Danfoss, had a great challenge to any leaders who say like, yeah, we have self-managing teams, or we're, I'm an empowering leader. And he says, okay, tell me the last decision that got made that you disagreed with. And then usually people fall silent. So I thought that was a nice example of how, a group proposed something, you didn't agree necessarily, but you're like, let's try it, let's experiment with it. And then I also really liked the notion that when it was reviewed and revisited, there was a sense that, yeah, there's probably a better way of doing it, but this way is simple and it's easy to trust simple.
Right.
And I thought that was also super interesting, because I've worked with groups that have, had these conversations about how do we share and distribute profit and bonuses and things like that. And there's always someone who suggests, let's just do it equally. And then there's always people who disagree with that. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And it's really hard to come up with something that's fair, because it's such a subjective term, right?
Well, and the other thing that's hard about that is that we assume that there's one way of doing it. So we either distribute equally, or we distribute according to years in the company, or to education levels, or to, but it's the same for everybody. You didn't go to school, well, you get nothing. You get the minimum because we agree that this should be a minimum. But you're a PhD, do a lot. My question is, okay, PhD, the guy didn't go to traditional school, what they contribute? And I may have an opinion of it, you have an opinion of it, the other person has an opinion, and most of the people don't even care. They don't know what he's done and stuff like that. And that's where the RAD distribution system came in, where you render your opinion by the number of RADs, the number of coupons or whatever you get this person, and I render it differently because I don't think he's contributed much, but his contribution was, I read that in a book 10 years ago. And the other person contributes. So we all contribute. We all give this person RAS on the basis of the contribution. And you may give more, you may give less, but that's what we see, right? So what's the ultimate fair is what I say. Fairness resides in me, but it resides in you and it resides in the other person, not one way of doing it. And so that's the other significant thing in the book, is the RAD distribution system, which I didn't realize that Eurovision, I'm a big fan of Eurovision, and it kind of works that way. Because in Eurovision, countries get so many points, but they have to give it to other countries.
Yeah, that's true.
See, I didn't realize that. So who pointed it out? I read a book recently, and he pointed it out, and I went, God, 3 years of Eurovision, and I didn't realize that. But the thing is, there was also a lot of scandals around that. When I lived in Spain, Spain and the Greeks were giving each other all their points or something.
Well, I'm British, and we never get points in the UK because everyone hates us. So it always feels like there's strategic ways of always making sure the UK never gets points.
Well, if you notice, most of the songs and the singers, stuff like that, are from the Mediterranean, and it kind of makes sense. It's, you can make a deal with the guy across the water, and you can go in a straight line and all that. But so how do you do that kind of distribution without scandalous kind of things happening? Me giving you all my points and you give me all your points and stuff like that. And that's where transparency comes in. If the system is transparent, and I notice this ping pong back and forth between two people, I'm going to go, isn't it funny? What's with you guys that you always do this? And, but it doesn't, I don't think it will get to that, because knowing that it's going to be in public, people are going to be able to see it. It's enough for people to roll back a little bit and not do those stupid things. But when there is, other people will catch it. I don't have to catch it. You don't have to catch it. Other people that know what's going on will catch it. And like I said, maybe it works. Maybe it's fair. Maybe it's not. if those people feel it's fair and I'm not paying attention to it, that's fine too. But that way we can all own the company dynamically. You contribute more this month, you own a little bit more this month. You contribute less, in that way. And when the first dollar comes in, or euro or whatever, it gets divided according to the percentage that we have at the time. Next month it'll be different. It'll be different. It'll be different. So, but that's I think that's been the obstacle all along. Is how do you make this? If we own the company in common, how do we? Who decides how much I get? And cooperative took the one way out, which is one person, one vote. So everybody gets divide by n. And as much as I think divide by n was a good start to make people trust the system that created the system and stuff like that, uh, people are not quite happy with the divide by n approach when it comes to money. If we're giving out eggs or carrots or something like that, then it'd be okay to give everybody equal shares. But when it comes to money, people get funny about that. Um, and, um, and so the system now is no longer that way. And even in Cora, which is now the new name for Nearsoft, um, because enough people said, "Oh, this is not fair," and they found a way that they were happy with. I don't know what it is. I don't care. Um, but they changed it because it was money related to it. And in this other way, money can go through it, whatever, carrots can go through it, eggs, whatever you want to give away, can go through the same mechanism saying, oh, you own 50%, I own 25%, that means you get twice as much as me. And if I have any questions as to why you get 50, I get to look and go, okay, all right. I see why you got 50. You've been contributing a lot. And damn, I didn't realize that. So that might be the way to make it work. And I say might be because other than Eurovision and a few other places, I haven't seen it work, or I haven't seen it put in place.
Yeah, I think like whenever I've mentioned to people co-ownership, people go, "Oh yeah, you mean like cooperatives?" But like I've interacted with a lot of cooperatives. Like people often talk about John Lewis partnership in the UK, for example, and inside it's a pretty traditional. It feels very much like a Fiat hierarchy.
It is.
And as you talk about in the book, it's like symbolic ownership. But when it comes to big decisions, I don't really have a say. So it's like cooperatives have been playing around with some aspects of co-ownership, and now this kind of future of work movement, we've been playing around with some aspects of co-management. But there's an opportunity to kind of bring the two together. What could be possible with co-management and co-ownership, and that's super inspiring. And it seems like we don't have many examples at the moment of that.
Thank you. Yeah, the only example I can think of that comes really close is W.L. Gore. Because as I understand it, the family still owns some percentage of the company, but the majority of the company is owned by the people. I don't know how they distribute it and stuff like that, but that's the closest. People mention Mondragon, but to me, that's the co-op. It's very traditional, very hierarchical co-op, and it's not a good example of it. I thought John Lewis. Oh wow! I listened to the recording of John Lewis talking when he was obviously very old, and it was quoting Perez. But unfortunately, he left the whole traditional hierarchy, the Fiat hierarchy, behind. Same thing with. I can't think of the name of the company in Germany, in Denmark. I'm sorry, and so Europe has a lot of these attempts of getting real close, but not quite. and I'm going to mispronounce it, but Burzog, I'll say it in English, in American English, also may be very close for all I know, but I don't know what the ownership is like over there, but they come pretty close to the ideal of small groups that manage their own and reward each other and stuff like that. Um, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because W.L. Gore, it's been doing that since like the 40s or something, right? Like it's a long time.
Which one?
W.L. Gore.
Gore started in 50. Well, okay, so Gore and his wife started in their basement in 52. I
Hmm.
remember that because I was born in 51, and I go, oh, wow, 69 years old. And then in 58 is when they made a company
Right, right.
and stuff like that, and they came with Gore-Tex and
Mm.
kinds of things. And they're a physical company too. I mean, they make chemicals and wet things and stuff like that, which I find all the more impressive.
Mm. Why do you think why do you think it hasn't happened? Like why do you think there are so few examples of this, or there have been sort of, attempts but nothing as yet kind of concrete in terms of co-management and co-ownership?
Um, because the Fiat hierarchical model um, has taken over.
Mm.
We've made it the dominant force in the world, um, and um, and it's been financially successful. It's given us a lot of things. I mean, if you think of all the, I am literally alive. I am literally alive because of medicine, literally. Um, and you got to be thankful for that. You can't just say, "Well, let's do it with everything and do the Russian Revolution all over again and stuff like that." No, that's worse than being silly about it. There's a lot of good that's in it. I'm not about to change anything other than I'm not even changing ownership. You still own, this is my book, and I own it. Um, it's just that I own it with two other people, and we're making it. What is it? We're making it so that anybody can copy and take pieces of it and stuff like that, because we see value in it for us, right? So all that part of it, I'm all for it. How that ownership is held and what kinds of things we've been through to get to even the ownership we have today is the tragic thing, right? At one point, we own people, and at one point, what else can I say? We own people and we exploited them and we killed them. I mean, the whole fantasy of the poor Indians and indigenous people here in the Americas died of because we had the immune system and they didn't and they died. No, 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 we killed them. We worked them to death, working the mines in places that they wouldn't have worked as much if we had done it. Slavery existed in this part of the world. It was not new, okay, but it's gotten more and more extreme, right? So then um, the American Indians here in this area in California um, went and grabbed slaves on a temporary basis to the harvesting farm. And then people would walk back home. And then they would go and catch them again. Or, they catch each other and all that stuff. So the idea of grabbing people to work for you was there. And it makes sense because it's a domestication kind of thing. You grab a thing that looks like a cow today and you domesticate it so it looks like a cow today, right? A wolf becomes a dog. And so it kind of makes sense. Um, and that part became very successful in making a few people wealthy. And those few people were smart enough, for the most part, to let to create a hierarchy of wealth. Right, so trickle down. In this country, trickle down is a big thing. the only thing that no trickles down is piss. Okay, and nothing else trickles down. So there is a boss that has sub bosses that have sub bosses and stuff like that, because that's your protection.
Mm.
Right? You're at the center. You got the circles of bosses and people that get a little bit less, a little bit less. But every so often, they two or three of them go, "Hey, why don't we cut his head off? Yeah, and we kill children. Yeah, let's do that." And they go and do it. And Europe is full of that, the history, and it's fun to read from
Mm.
instance. And or they get silly, like George, whatever his number was, with the Americas. He thought he could keep exploiting the America for nothing. And it's like, nope, you met the thing here. You met your match at this point with the Americans. And then the Americans, I have a lot of respect for the U.S. system. I'm from Cuba originally, and so I have a lot of respect for this country and the Constitution and everything else. I think for the time it was brilliant, 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 brilliant. Um, but things are never static, and that's the first thing they recognize. The Constitution is minimal, right? And the Declaration of Independence is nothing. It's like 2 pages, and or 10, and because they expect the things to continue changing. I believe it changed in ways that they didn't foresee, right? Slaves being free and everybody being equality with women and stuff like that. It's like, no, 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 you don't do that. But that's fine. They weren't trying to rule the future. They were giving the foundation to the future. And I think in that sense, it was super brilliant, um, because we're the beneficiaries of all that. So what do we have to tweak so that people are not broken by broken systems?
Mm.
That's the primary thing, and that's what we try to do in the book. And I've read some other papers since then about money and land and governments, because I kind of touch them, but I don't get into it really in there. But the companies is the beachhead. It's where people spend most of their working hours at companies, right? So that's where they learn things. They learn their values. This is more important than that, and blah 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 blah. But I don't know how they can stay there. That's going to spill out into the rest of society, and then they're going to start questioning, why is this guy in the mayor in town telling me how to run my store? I mean, American libertarians like to say that they think that way, but they don't. Um, but why should they rule my store? And even it's even more convincing when the question is, why should he rules our store,
Mm.
right? Um, and yeah, we have to consider the rest of society and all that stuff. We can't dump crap in the middle of the street and all that stuff. But I have to have the wherewithal to experiment and do things. You're not the boss of me, and as it starts to spill out, it affects how do we handle land, how do we handle governments, national governments. I think are a big obstacle to a world, to our having a world. All the problems that we're having with the world today, I put it right in the lap of national governments. Not the oil companies and all that stuff are beneficiaries of national governments, but national governments are standing in the middle of it. So the more I try to fix it, I see all these agreements, international agreements, and blah blah blah. It's all nonsense because Trump comes along and just undoes everything. Um, the guy that follows Macron in France may come along and undo everything. In the UK, what's his name with the hair? He's undoing as much as he can. So it's we elect our rulers. That's better than it passing from son to daughter and stuff like that, to father to son and daughter. But what I would like to see is no, we don't have rulers. I'm a ruler,
Mm.
and but I have to live with these people in this community. If I don't like it anymore, I exit that community, go uh, look for another one. But that's the kind of rule that, and we have to look out for the world because without the spaceship Earth, we're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's more likely to be concerned for individuals than for somebody whose only purpose in life is to make money because that guy is making more money.
Mm.
You know, if Bezos number one. No, I'll try to get in there. You know, what's his name? The guy from Tesla. What's his name?
Elon
Musk.
Musk.
You know, he tries to get in there because he's number one. And then Gates, whatever.
Mm.
It's ridiculous. Okay. And by the way, I don't think that they're really competing on that basis. I don't really think they are, but that's what it looks like. And in the process, they can't take a step backwards and say, okay, we got to do some of the things in order to save our spaceship. Um, and I don't see them doing that because, again, they're responsible to the shareholders and stuff like that, and to the system in general. And so we have to help them to do the right thing.
Yeah, and it sort of loops back to, one of the first things that you started talking about, which was that, you were for a while a boss and benefiting from being a boss in that system and so on.
I,
And
I, I still am.
yeah,
Unfortunately, I still am.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you had at some point, you used the word conscious, you had a realization or something kind of dawned on you of like, hey, I'm not okay with this, or I want to set up a company that works for everyone and not just for me and the owners and so
Oh,
on.
that was Roberto, my partner, Martinez. He's also a very enlightened monarch.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like, you know, and I'm not a believer in like either or. I think I really like the idea like let's not just rely on or be dependent on enlightened monarchs. Let's create, ownership models and organizational models that avoid that. And at the same time, I'm also interested in what does it take for someone to become enlightened, if we want to use that word.
Ah,
What, because it's, it strikes me that that's an uncomfortable, maybe even painful process to realize, the harm you have done in some ways, to sort of learn another way of being when you've been conditioned into the Fiat
yeah,
hierarchy way of being.
yeah.
Like what have been steps for you along that journey of, becoming conscious, if you like, in terms of, who you are?
Hmm. Um, so the first step was more of a I had a feeling that things weren't working for me as a boss, um, and I knew that weren't working necessarily for the people around me. And so based on that, I had this feeling of let's do something different, you know. And Adrian Perez, one of the co-authors of this book, discovered Maverick. He insisted that I read it, and then I insisted that Roberto read it, and we all read it, and we went, head exploded, basically. And then later, much later, is when I started thinking about, shit, what have I done? It's one, every, there's a joyful thing of, oh, we can do this without permissions, without blah, blah, blah. Which is not the same as consultation. Consultation is important, particularly if it's below the waterline
Mm.
kind of decision. But you're not asking for permission. You're asking for what do you think? What are the pros and cons and stuff like that. But what did it bring home? How did I raise my kids?
Mm.
And uh, I went through a couple of years, more than that probably, of really beating myself up over God, I should have this, I should have that, I should have the other. And then I came to the point where, well, I should have, could have, would have, but I can't. It's gone.
Mm.
So what can I do now in the future to make up for what I've done, what I created, so to speak, and really the answer came down to you have to ask. The first Fiat thing is thinking that you have the answer. Um, so it's like, yeah, I think I've done all those things, and then you get to ask, so what can I do? Anything you need from me? And most of the time, the answer was no, no. I'm happy with who I am. Okay, So now I'm free from feeling guilty and all that stuff because I gotten the they're happy with who they are. Again, my oldest son contributed to this book quite a bit, and so amongst all the negative things, some positive things happen as well. And it's not just us. A lot of people, the people who started cooperatives, John Lewis, is very clear in his story that he wanted to do something, and his dad was a real captain of the industry, to use a nice term. Um, but he wanted to do something that other than what his dad did, and so he came up with this other thing. So you can't criticize him because he was a child of his time. Um, what you have to say is, okay, you did that, great. That's not enough. Let's do the next step and the next step. And future work, quote, management, self-management, whatever you want to call it, there's another step. And I think this is co-ownership. There's another step beyond that. I don't know what it is. And I don't dare, if I figure it out before I knock over, I'll write another book or something like that. But right now, I just can't see, because it's going to be hard enough to get this out into the world, and you're being a big part of promoting it, getting it in people's heads, that there's something beyond just feeling happy and just feeling good and feeling that's all fine, but what do you take for long term with you? If you one day decide to stop working, what we call retirement now, which I think that's one of the first things that will disappear. I'm 70. I'm not about to retire. I'm enjoying the heck out of what I'm doing. Why would I retire from life? It doesn't make sense. Um, so, but what if I want to stop working for a living? If I want to stop contributing to a company, well, I probably start a company of my own just by doing what I'm doing. Other people will come along, and eventually income will come my way. But what if it doesn't? Well, I have my grants that I got from this company and that company, the other company, and it's going down in time. It's being less and less and less, but it's providing an income for me, right? Um, so I think it's overall a workable system. And the biggest obstacle we got, standing in the way of that system to happen, is right here. Is because we have brought the system to bear, and now we have to undo it. And unlearning is really hard. Unlearning anything, undoing what you created is really, really hard. Scary hard. So.
Yeah, maybe one of the ways to kind of start to conclude our conversation is like, what would your advice be, or what have you learned about unlearning that you could offer listeners who are on various different stages of their journey of exploring new ways of working, co-management, co-ownership, who knows, what words of wisdom would you throw their way?
I don't have any, to be honest.
I thought you might say that.
all I can do is talk about how I've been going about it, and obviously I've been pretty intense about this. But the what I don't know if it's the first thing, but the most important thing to me has been acknowledging and respecting each person for what they are. Um, so I have lots of friends and families and whatever that are gay, one is transitioning, and this and that, and I was very cool. I accepted them all. I'm a very modern kind of man, but um, I knew who was gay, who was transitioning, who was this and that and the other. In my mind, they were in their boxes, right? Oh, he's gay. Just don't say any gay jokes in front of him. But I would say gay jokes in front of my other friends, right? That I knew were very macho and stuff like that. Um, and women, by the way, that it cuts across genders. Um, and then I started looking at them as, damn, they're people. I don't know how it happened. Okay, maybe it was thinking about this ownership, and we're all we all have the same capabilities. You know that expression, "There, but before grace of God goes I." Um, it's so true. Anything you see in another human being, the craziest stuff that Trump ever did, and what's his name with the hair he's doing in the UK, I can look at it and go, that could be me. That could be me. Given the right circumstances, if I had hair like what's his name, I probably would have done the same thing. Okay, um, it's all circumstantial. So we're really lucky. I consider almost every day I say at least once, I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky. I'm really because I am that the circumstances aligned themselves so that they ended up in me, which I'm pretty happy with. Okay, so I bet you the same is true for everybody, except this guy was having depression, and um, but not because he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with himself, but not because of who he was, because of the depression. Okay, that's fine. And I found that other people were not happy with themselves. No depression, no clinical conditions. They were just not happy with what they're doing, but I have to do it because I make a pretty good living doing this. I have to. What else would I do? And that's the first obstacle to ownership. What would I do? Would I live without, I can't afford to live without an income, and I have 2 cars and 3 kids, and I need this much money to have that income, with this much money to have the life. Um, so to me, again, backing up, it came to, okay, so everybody has been on a lucky path, even though they went through unlucky times, okay, and I've been through my unlucky times, but it doesn't matter. It ended up being what it is today. I'm grateful and all that. And the same is true for everybody. So I no longer have great friends or transitioning friends or anything friends. I have friends and people that I don't like, and they may even live across the street from me. And but the thing is, they're people. They're not resources. They're not geniuses. They're just people. And and then I found myself not caring about not I mean caring and not caring, but not um, caring as an obstacle kind of thing for a bunch of other things. If you were poor, not poor, or a guy coming to me and begging in the street, what you normally do is you take out some money, you throw it at him to like go away, be happy with the $2 that I sent your way. And now I stop and talk to the guy. I try to, most of them have mental problems, and we need to fix that. Um, there go Fiat again. So, but you start to see people as people. And by the way, that's when from that, I came to the idea of the broad distribution thing, that anybody could distribute property to other people. It doesn't have to, I don't know anything special other than that information that is not disclosed. Okay. Um, and so anybody can learn, um, how to distribute money and stuff like that. Um, the book has gone through at least three lifetimes. It started being an homage to Nearsoft and happy, and all that. And then it became more a mix of things. And um, I think I showed you an early copy, and I'm grateful that you didn't. Most people went, "What the heck is this?" And then it finally became this book, because it's gone through all these transformations that echo not in my head. So try to look at people as people, and it's really hard. It is really hard, you know.
Yeah, it's so true. We have so many biases, and I think often money is a way of revealing them. I think when you say like, well, why can't anyone decide how we distribute money or something? And then is when usually you get protests. And if you really dig under the surface, there's some assumption that, well, maybe they'll make a stupid decision, or
Right.
you know, only educated people should be able to do that, or people with the special information, or and then it's like,
Yes.
interesting.
No.
Yeah. Well, I just really want to acknowledge you for writing this book and for bringing this into the movement. I think it's a real contribution. I think it's bringing up really important questions for us to be asking, and I'm really glad that you're doing it. So thank you, and thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your experiences and learnings. It's really, really valuable.
It's an honor. I really like the way you do things, and talking to you and stuff like that. It really is an honor.
Thank you.